Well, I've got a bone to pick this morning. Why is it so hard for people to correctly merge onto the highway? I see you share in that frustration. Do you know who taught me how to merge onto the highway?
Amy.
Yes! Betty guessed it. My wife, Amy. Maybe it's because I never took driver's ed growing up, but merging into traffic was not a skill I acquired until college. I was one of those people who would creep onto the highway and wait until somebody would brake to let me in. It meant that I would ride the shoulder for much longer than I needed to, and it drove Amy crazy. She didn't like driving with me. She advised me to speed up to the speed everybody else was going and then merge in without having to make anyone else hit their brakes. And that's how you're supposed to merge. Just in case there's somebody here who doesn't know, that's how you're supposed to do it. Mikey got his driver's permit and he's learning how to drive. Mikey, this sermon's for you, pal. See, the other cars on the highway, they have the right-of-way, right? So that means that we need to get on without causing anybody else to brake. We are the ones who need to adjust to the highway. It's now become my goal when merging. Get on, merge onto the highway without causing the right-of-way cars to have to brake. If you don't take anything else out of this sermon, take that. You know, it's good advice for driving. It's also good advice when it comes to following Jesus. We're continuing our series today, Who is This Man? And we're reading from Luke chapter 4, verses 20 through 30. I know the screen says 21 through 30, but I made the screen before I decided to add that in. We're actually going to start a verse early. Verse 20 through 30. It's a continuation from where we were last week. We're in the same chapter that we were last week. Jesus has just dropped some surprising proclamations about himself in a Galilean synagogue, that he is the Messiah. And then he quotes from Isaiah chapter 61 about the type of ministry that the Messiah himself is going to be about. And it's surprising. It was a surprising thing to do suddenly in a church service. Imagine somebody coming in here, and we've asked somebody to come read Scripture, and they read some Scripture and say, by the way, this is about me. And then they go and sit down. We'd all be a little surprised, wouldn't we? Well, that's what Jesus did. And as they're pondering what Jesus has just said to them, he continues the surprises. So look at Luke chapter 4, starting in verse 20. These first two verses should be familiar to you. It says, Then he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of everyone in the synagogue were fastened on him. He began by saying to them, Today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. All spoke well of him, and were amazed at the gracious words that came from his lips. Isn't this Joseph's son? They asked. Jesus said to them, Surely you will quote this proverb to me, Physician, heal yourself. And you will tell me, Do here in your hometown what we have heard that you did in Capernaum. Truly I tell you, he continued, no prophet is accepted in his hometown. I assure you that there were many widows in Israel in Elijah's time, when the sky was shut for 3.5 years and there was a severe famine throughout the land. Yet Elijah was not sent to any of them, but to a widow in Zarephath, in the region of Sidon. And there were many in Israel with leprosy in the time of Elisha the prophet, yet Not one of them was cleansed, only Naaman, the Syrian. All the people in the synagogue were furious when they heard this. They got up, drove him out of the town, and took him to the brow of the hill on which the town was built in order to throw him off the cliff. But he walked right through the crowd and went on his way. This is the word of the Lord. Praise be to God. So what makes the crowd mad enough to attempt homicide by cliff? Was it really that Jesus said he was the Messiah? Like, was it really that he was so arrogant? Well, not exactly. Sure, that played some role in it, but not exactly. A lot of people had come along at this point in Israelite history. A lot of people had come along claiming to be the Messiah. The Jewish people, they were ready to follow any potential candidate. That's how desperate they were to get their own nation back again. They were prepared to follow anybody that claimed to be the Messiah if that person defined Messiah on their terms. In other words, they wanted Jesus to adjust to them instead of the other way around. But Jesus will not adjust to anyone else's mission. Jesus is going to be the Messiah God sent him to be. I think our big takeaway from this passage is this: it is not Jesus who needs to merge into our mission, it is us who need to merge into His. Just like those drivers on the highway, Jesus has the right of way. But the problem was for these Nazarenes, these Galileans in that synagogue that day, their problem is that they just didn't know how to merge. They didn't know how to do it. And you know, sometimes we don't know how to merge either. So consider this today, driver's education for the faith. How do you successfully merge onto Jesus' highway, into Jesus' mission? Well, first, if we're going to merge into Jesus' mission, we need to change lanes. We need to move from what can I get out of this to what can I put into this. That's the lane we're going to have to move into. From what can I get out of this to what can I put into this. So at first, the Galileans are pretty positive about Jesus. Did you notice that after he sits down? They're not angry yet. It says that all spoke well of him. They're pretty positive. In fact, they're downright excited. When they start to say, hey, isn't this guy Joseph's son? It's out of anticipation of what it means for them. They're not saying, is that Joseph's son? They're saying, hey, isn't this Joseph's son? If he's really the Messiah, I mean, Joseph's from here, we're from here. I mean, if he's really the Messiah, it can only mean good things for us. And Jesus anticipates this. He knows what they're thinking. He intercepts their thoughts by saying, surely you will quote this proverb to me, physician, heal yourself. And you will tell me, do here in your hometown what we have heard you did in Capernaum. Those aren't negative phrases. They're not wording all this stuff negatively. They're excited about what Jesus is coming to do for them. They're both expressing the same line of reasoning. He's from Galilee. So if he's really the Messiah, then surely he is going to heal us first. That He's going to help us first. But what they're really thinking is this, and Jesus knows it. What they're really thinking is, how can we exploit this opportunity for our gain? How can we exploit this for us? And the people of Nazareth, that little city in particular, the city of Nazareth, already suspected that the Messiah would come from their town. They are already thinking, for centuries now, the Messiah is going to come from us. So you see, after the Babylonian exile, the descendants of King David, the family of King David, returned and settled in Nazareth. That's the area all of King David's family came back to after the exile. In Hebrew, the name Nazareth even means little netzer, little offshoot. It's a direct reference to that famous messianic passage in Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1. A shoot will come from the stump of Jesse. Who is Jesse? Jesse was King David's father. It was common knowledge that the Messiah would be in the line of who? David. And here we are, King David's family in Nazareth. If the Messiah is going to be in the line of David, and we're in the line of David, then the Messiah is going to come from us, from our town. And along comes Jesus saying, "It's me. Here I am." "Aha," they said. "Aha, here He is. We knew it all along. We knew the Messiah would come from here. Jesus, our homegrown player. Here He is. Physician, heal yourself." Physician, that's us. Heal yourself. Jesus, one of the local boys. Ah, here He is. Jesus, our hometown prophet. Come to benefit us. Right? And Jesus says, "Nope." Oh, don't hear me wrong. You'll benefit, all right. You will benefit from what I'm about to do if you can adjust to my mission and follow me. See, that's how we benefit from the gospel. The gospel isn't really about you. It's about Jesus and His mission. He has the right of way. And how many people come to church with a "what can I get out of this" mentality? What can the church do for me? Or what can Jesus do for me? Bud Wilkinson, a famous football coach, was once asked, what contribution does professional sports make to the physical fitness of Americans? To no one's surprise, he answered, very little. Very little. A professional football game, he says, is happening where 50,000 spectators, desperately needing exercise, sit in the stands watching 22 men on the field desperately needing rest. Sometimes that describes the local church pretty well too. 50,000 spectators and 22 people doing all the work. So don't hear me wrong. Don't hear me wrong. On the one hand, you should get something out of your church. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that you're only here so that we can drain every ounce of energy we have from you. I've told a church member this before. It's dangerous to tell a pastor what you're good at or what you're passionate about, because sometimes they exploit that. So don't hear me wrong. Jesus wants to heal you. Jesus wants to do something in your life. Our church wants to minister to you. But on the other hand, Jesus is calling you to participate in something beyond Himself. Think about all the ways that Jesus called His disciples. What did Jesus say when He called all of His disciples? Did He say, hey, come on and I'll get you into heaven for free? I can do a lot for you. No, what did Jesus say? Jesus said, follow me. In other words, merge onto my highway. Come with me. I'm doing something in the world. Will you come with me? Will you follow me? Will you love who I want to love? Will you be about what I want you to be about? Will you be about the gospel? That's what I'm calling you to. Are there benefits to that? Yeah, there's some real perks for you in following Jesus, but that's not what He calls us to first. What He calls us to is to follow Him. At some point, you're going to have to come out of the stands and get in the game. You're going to have to move lanes. You're going to have to move from what can I get out of this to what can I put into this. Second, if we are going to merge into Jesus' mission, we need to go from how do I keep them out to how do we get them in. From how do we keep them out to how do we get them in. You know, this is the part that really makes the people mad enough to chunk Jesus from that cliff. This is the part that really makes them furious, in the words of Luke. They can handle the Messiah stuff. They can handle that. Lots of people came along claiming to be the Messiah. They can handle that. They can handle the arrogance. They can handle all the stuff about the poor and oppressed. Yeah, we get all that. We can handle that. They can handle it because they think it's all about them. That's why they can handle it. But when Jesus illustrates His mission, He illustrates it with two stories involving non-Israelites. He illustrates His mission with stories about Gentiles. And when He does that, it's the widow from Zarephath that Elijah provided food for, by the way. And it's the Syrian leper that Elisha cured. Both Gentiles. When Jesus illustrates with that, they lose it. Well, all of a sudden they're mad enough to kill. A lot of people came along claiming to be that Messiah, but all of them defined Messiahship. They defined it in terms of restoring the Israelite kingdom. That's what they were expecting the Messiah to do. Yeah, we're going to put Israel back on top. Israel, number one, Israel. That's what they wanted the Messiah to do. In terms of saving, yeah, the Messiah was supposed to save, but who is He supposed to save? The Israelites, not everybody else. The Messiah was supposed to come along and kill off all those pesky Romans. Yeah, let's kill them. Let's have a bloodbath. That's what they wanted the Messiah to do. Jesus is the first one to claim to be the Messiah that said the mission is going to be worldwide. Y'all don't understand. The mission is going to be worldwide to those outside of Israel, to Gentiles. You know, just behind McDonald's, KFC is the second largest fast food restaurant chain in the world. Did y'all know that? KFC. So what makes them so successful? What makes KFC so successful? It's the fact that KFC is willing to alter its finger-licking good recipe to accommodate to the localized taste buds of each region in the world. They are willing to adjust so much to get people in their doors that a lot of the food that they're serving in these other parts of the world would be unrecognizable to us. So I have some pictures. In the Philippines, your chicken sandwich comes with cheese on the outside. That makes 0 sense to me. I don't claim to understand it. It's bad logic. How's that cheese going to stay on there? I don't know. They don't know either. But they like their cheese on the outside. So KFC said, all right, we'll do it. We'll put your cheese on the outside. In Thailand, KFC serves this. It's something called a shrimp donut. Shrimp doesn't look like that at all. And so I don't know what they're having to do to these shrimps to get them in a donut, but they do. You can get a shrimp donut. Australian KFCs sell nacho boxes. And I guess there's chicken in there somewhere. But you can get nacho boxes at the Australian KFC. Apparently that's a big deal. And then this one was the craziest one to me. Finally in China, you can get this. It's called a chizza, which is a chicken pizza thing, I guess. And but that's just a hunk of fried chicken with pizza stuff on top. You can get that in China, apparently, at KFC. The bottom line is that the people that need Jesus the most are probably people that just don't look a whole lot like you and me. Like, that's the bottom line. People who really need Jesus, they probably just don't look like your average church-going folks. So if we're going to merge into Jesus' mission, if we're going to move from how do I keep them out to how do I get them in, we need to start selling chicken a little bit differently. Do y'all know why I occasionally wear blue jeans on a Sunday morning? Well, yeah. Growing up in the Baptist churches I went to, especially in like the early 90s and 1980s and anything past that, if a preacher showed up in blue jeans, golly, he'd be called into personnel, wouldn't he? Like something would be going on. In fact, pastors and preachers for a long time have been expected to be, suit and tie all the time. Pastor at the Woodlands, Bruce Webb, told me that he was working for a pastor one time and just ran over to his house because he needed something real quick, just ran up. It wasn't a big deal, knocked on the door, and the pastor said, "Who is it?" from inside the door, and Bruce said, "It's me, Bruce, your youth minister." And the pastor said, "Hang on." And ran into the back, and he waited and waited. And he said when that preacher opened the door, he was suit and tie. Like on a Tuesday afternoon. And Bruce was like, "What are you doing? You don't have to do that." And but that's been a real thing. But the reason I wear blue jeans on Sunday morning is not because I'm trying to be hip. I know I'm not hip. That's not it. It's not because I'm trying to be relevant. It's purely because of this. The majority of the guys around here, majority of your blue-collar, hard-working boys, the local boys around here, what do they wear every day? They wear blue jeans. And most likely those blue jeans are tucked into a pair of boots, right? Steel-toed work boots. And so I wear blue jeans on a Sunday morning every now and then because if any one of those guys ever ventures into our doors, I want them to know. You can wear your blue jeans here. That's perfectly okay. I'm willing to sell my chicken a little bit differently if that means that somebody will come into a relationship with Jesus Christ. I'm willing to do it. And you know what?
I don't care what you wear.
Thank you, Betty. And you know what? Chicken is still chicken. You know that? Chicken is still chicken no matter how you serve it. And the gospel is still the gospel too. How you serve it, though, makes all the difference. How you serve up that gospel, oh man, that just makes all the difference in the world. Does the gospel change? Absolutely not. The gospel message is the same. It doesn't change. Does it come in a little bit different package? Absolutely. You look at Christianity all around the world and all the different flavors and all the diversity of the Christian world, and it's just obvious that the gospel comes in a variety of different packages, but it never changes. Its core character is always the same. So there may come a day when things look a little different around here. Right? That's what it means, is that things may look a little different around here. The music one day might be a little different. The building might look a little different. But that's okay. It's okay because the gospel of Jesus Christ never changes. And that's what we can hang our hats on. That's what we can hold on to always through anything. So lastly, if we're going to merge into Jesus' mission, we need to move from, "Do you know who I am?" to, "Well, who am I?" From, "Do you know who I am?" to, Who am I? The Jewish people were absolutely convinced that they were God's people. Which isn't unfounded, right? Take almost any passage in the Old Testament and it says just as much. The problem was that they thought that they were God's only people. That they were the only people that God was interested in. And then they were arrogant about it. Do you know what they said if you had any physical interaction at all with a non-Israelite, with a Gentile? Do you know what they said? They said that they were unclean. Think about how insulting that word is. Don't touch me. Great. Now I'm unclean. I got to go wash now. You made me dirty. That's pretty rough, isn't it? Like, non-Jewish people were the equivalent of a stray dog to Jewish people. A dirty, mangy, flea-ridden dog. That's how they saw and treated people. And that's why the examples Jesus brings up from the Old Testament are so intriguing. Especially Naaman, the Syrian leper. Especially that one. 2 Kings 5:14. 2 Kings 5:14 says that not only was Naaman's skin healed, like not only that was Naaman cured, but it says that Naaman became clean. And Jesus says it too, when Naaman was cleansed. That does not make any sense to a Jewish person. That makes zero sense that a Syrian leper can be made clean. A Gentile can be cured. Sure. A Gentile can be healed from his rash or whatever's going on his skin. Sure, we get that. But a Gentile can never be made clean. And Jesus says, you're wrong about that. You're wrong about it. I did it in the Old Testament for a Syrian leper, and I'm doing it again today. And you're not better than anybody else. I didn't choose you to be a gatekeeper. I'm here to make anybody clean that comes to me. Anybody at all. Every stray person, every lost or lonely or unclean individual in the world gets to come to Jesus. It does not matter your pedigree. Jesus is here for everyone. Did you know that Mohandas Gandhi nearly became a Christian? Mohandas Gandhi, he was this close. The leader of the Indian national movement against oppressive British rule, considered the father of his country. He's one of the most incredible people to ever walk this earth. He is internationally esteemed for his doctrine of nonviolence to achieve political and social achievement. Gandhi nearly became a Christian. Gandhi says in his autobiography that in his student days he was truly interested in the Bible. He read it and he liked it, deeply touched by reading the Gospels. He seriously considered following Jesus, since Christianity seemed to offer the real solution to the caste system in India that divided people based on their social status. It still exists in India today. But one Sunday he went to a nearby church to attend services. He decided to see the ministry and ask how it is that a person could be saved and receive Jesus into their life. But when he entered the sanctuary, the usher refused to give him a seat. And he suggested that he go and worship with his own people. And so he left. And he never came back. If Christians have caste differences also, he said to himself, I might as well remain a Hindu. So if we're going to merge into Jesus' mission, we've got to move. We've got to do it. We've got to move from, do you know who I am? Or do you know who we are? To, who am I? Who am I? I'm no better than anybody else. All of us approach Jesus from the exact same status. All of us. We've got to move to the words of the psalmist who says, "Who am I that you would be mindful of me?" Or we've got to move to the words of Paul when he says, "Here is a trustworthy saying that deserves full acceptance. Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, of whom," this is Paul here, "of whom I am the worst." Jesus will not adjust to our mission. He's not going to do it. He didn't adjust to those Galileans. He's not going to adjust to ours. We're going to have to adjust to His. We have to merge into Jesus' mission. And I want you to notice one more thing about this passage. It's that very last line, verse 30. Don't skip over it. After Jesus has announced this good news, after He's redefined what the Messiah's mission is going to be, that it's going to include a lot more people than you may think, after they have refused to adjust to Him, and after they're trying to chunk Him off that cliff, Luke softly, subtly says, "But He walked right through the crowd and went on His way." I think that's what happens. I think that's what happens when a person refuses to merge into Jesus. He just passes them on by. Will you pray with me?